Hi, this is Mike Henriksen from Velocity 2016 in Amsterdam. I'm here with Drit from Catchpoint. Drit, how you doing?
Pretty good. Nice to meet you.
You too. So you're a product marketing officer at Catchpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me any characteristics that you see in the European market here?
Well, what we're seeing in the European market is that there's a big push of traditional companies moving into the digital era, and as they're pushing toward there, they're always being challenged with the new technologies, with the new stacks, and how do they monitor, how do they scale them up, and how do they grow their business, and obviously how does it fit within their organization. So that's the biggest challenge we've seen, and it's very similar to what you're seeing in US too.
Or around the world, really.
Around the world,
this whole
yeah.
IT transformation.
Exactly. We like to brand everything, so they call it IT transformation, digital transformation.
Yeah.
But I think is what companies have done all their lifetime is how do I keep up with the time? How do I can leverage today's technology to be more successful? And you know.
But does it seem like we've come to a point where systems are more brittle now because they haven't updated as often as they should have in the last 10 years or so?
Well, I think one of the challenges that you see is it's in the last 10 years, some of the companies have continued staying on their old technology because they have worked. But what happens is that technical debt, as you grow, it eventually will catch up with you, and it's just a question of when. I think the other challenge that we're seeing is over the years, a lot of companies, what they did is they kept separate between their new online technologies and what the old technologies were, and both of them grew at different rates, and now they are trying to make them work together even more closely. And it seems that it's brittle, but actually what it is not that it's brittle, it's just they are so complex that they start breaking down because of that complexity. And obviously poses a challenge for them, and they're trying to keep up with it. And I think sometimes just doing a reboot might be the right answer, and I think that's what some of them have figured out.
And some of these reboots, though, are focused around microservices, and so then they spin off a bunch of microservices.
Correct.
Thinking that's going to break this big hairball of logic down into smaller pieces,
Correct.
But you're just creating more disparate, smaller hairballs.
Correct. I think that's some of the challenges that has happened, and I think a lot of times what companies are doing, unfortunately, is they're not stopping and thinking, what's my end goal, and start from that and work backwards. But some of them are starting with like, oh, you know, this is the best technology, and they get sold on something from somebody, and they follow it, but they forget to align it with their end goals, and then they stop and they're like, okay, how does this happen? So we were talking yesterday to a media company, and they did move to microservices last year, and then today came to a realization that when they did the project last year, none of the goals talked about performance. So now their site is 8 seconds, and now performance becomes key, and it's like, we just did this system last year, what happened? Well, that was not the goal in there, and they missed that big goal, and now they have to catch up with it.
And so do you guys help people identify that? I mean,
Correct.
Along their journey before they get going?
Yes.
Or?
So for different companies, we are offering them a solution to basically, I think the key thing for most businesses is what our take is, you have to monitor from that endpoint, from the end user experience.
From where you want to be?
Correct.
Okay.
So if you are, for example, a luxury brand and you have a luxury website and you have markets in China, India, and that's where your growth is, I mean, it doesn't matter if you're monitoring from your offices in UK or Italy, and it's like, hey, it's working fine. Well, in China, that Google tag that you might have there might be causing the user to have a bad user experience.
The whole big firewall throttling of...
Right.
Yeah.
The same thing with APIs. I mean, sometimes you have to stop and think, who are my consumers? Where are they? What path they're taking to get my service? And then try to monitor from that perspective, not just monitor from within. You have to monitor from both sides, because at the end of the day, who are you going to be judged by is the people outside your enterprise. Who are those consumers, and not your servers and the people inside the enterprise who are managing them.
So do you see any industries that are further ahead in building higher performing websites? I mean, is it obviously retail and e-commerce?
Well, retail, obviously, e-commerce has always kept up with the time just because they have that challenge.
Making money.
Correct. And also, it has been the biggest growth over the decade, right? If you look where the growth was in the internet, was always e-commerce, right? But there's other companies there. When you look at SaaS providers, when you look at what we call now under cloud, but there is a lot of vendors in there. A lot of them were digital first, right? They were born in the day of the internet. They scaled in the day of the internet. So they have, and they came from other companies that dealt on the internet. So they have solved those challenges. I think where we see there's a little bit more of challenges from the companies that have been there from 20th century and they have had very well established offices and systems, and maybe they're still on mainframe. Maybe they are still in ERP solutions, and now they are sold on this cloud and moving to new solutions, but then they're like, hey, what's going on? Why is my employees unsatisfied with this new service I deployed called Salesforce or whatever it's called? Why are they not, why are my consumers not happy? And so you see those challenges on those companies just because they haven't been there before.
And nowadays, every company is a digital company. Every company is a software company.
Exactly.
Every company seems like they're doing software, hardware, and how they're interacting with Internet of Things. And that slows down their development and their...
Well, I think what it slows down is, I think everybody has subscribed to the agile development. I think I haven't met a customer of ours that doesn't do agile development nowadays, right?
Or tries to do it.
Or tries to do it. I mean, there's a different question of how well they do it, but at least they have subscribed to the mentality, they have sprints and all these things. I think what has happened is the push for new features, the push for the next technology. Continuous development. They're doing all this fast development, and I think sometimes what happens with that fast development is you are becoming reactive and not proactive. It seems a little bit counterintuitive, but if you try to keep going forward and you don't look back and you don't stop and take a breather and say, hey,
learn from what you've done.
Exactly. Then you go into this vicious circle, and you also build complexity. I mean, what we saw, for example, when we had the DDoS attack of Dyn in October, is we saw a lot of companies that were not prepared. I mean, we had customers calling us that were not prepared. They didn't know how to handle it. And these were not companies that were not born in the internet. These were companies that were born in the internet. And I think that's the challenge, is the complexity, the keep going faster forward, I think has not made us, let's take regular stops and take a breather and see how can I do this better.
So does Catchpoint help companies predict where they want to be in the future?
Yep. So what Catchpoint does today is the first thing we try to focus is identify that you have a problem. Believe it or not, a lot of companies have a problem today of not being able to see there is actually a problem that's impacting their business. We call them false negatives, but you can call them blind spots. And that's the most common thing that we today do. Try to tell you have a problem, Mr. Customer, and you have a problem here, and try to give you the information that you need to solve that problem. Where we're moving, and we did some steps already, is trying to go more in the predictive, more on tell you what the problem is, and ideally even kind of solve the problem for you. And how can we integrate with those other pieces that you have there for automation, so that if we know is this problem, automatically deploy a script, or switch a DNS, or switch something so that you are not down and you don't have to wake up somebody at 3 a.m. At 7 a.m. when they're up, they can go and see, okay, everything is fine and dandy. Those are the things that we're doing going forward. We recently just launched a predictive outage analyzer. Actually, what it does is it's going in the predictive. Over the last few years, there's been a big push for real user measurement. The challenge with real user measurement is it only knows when the customer makes it to your website. Well, so if you're down, the customer never makes it to your website, and therefore you don't know that you're down. But one of the things that we build on that product of ours is actually the ability to use past data to predict that you are having an outage and predict where that outage is. So it's using predictive analytics, but to tell you something that synthetic usually tells you you're down.
So we've been talking about prediction and predictive modeling. Can we predict what you and I would talk about if we sit down next year here at Velocity? What will Catchpoint be doing in the 12 months coming up to that point?
Well, the goal of the company is how can we get the mean time to resolution to 0, right? How can I make IT operations be those heroes that are not focusing on being firefighters, but they're focusing on more productive things for the business? So I think if 12 months from now we were to talk and what was the achievement of Catchpoint over the next 12 months, it'd be A, cut it further, what that mean time to resolution is. 2, we would have integrated and be able to resolve some of these issues through integration with other tools and other systems that you have as an enterprise, so that you don't have human beings doing the changes, but maybe automatically those changes are done for you once the problem is identified. And the third one that we are going to spend a lot of time on is how do we make IT ops speak that business language? How can we make them tie the decisions they're making today with the business side and the return on investment that their enterprise is going to happen. Because at the end of the day, when you look at what IT does, is a service delivery system that is using technology, but it's a cost center. And at the end of the day is how they make those decisions to cut costs and increase revenue. That's how they're going to be judged by their C-level suite. And so if they can better articulate their ROI to the other side of the business, I think they'll be more successful.
And Catchpoint will help them demonstrate that
Yes.
ROI?
I mean, we already do, but we want to go to that next level where we can answer a lot of more questions that we're seeing today from them. It is a big challenge, believe it or not. And sadly today, what we see with customers is it leads to finger pointing a lot of times. That side. And I think you can't operate as a business if you have that within your organization.
Excellent. We look forward to that conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice meeting you.